Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really wonderful guest today. Her name is Michelle Chung. She's coming all the way from Australia, which is really exciting. And she's a soulmate manifestation coach. And I'm really excited to have her on. Thank you so much for being here today, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. And it's so exciting. I think you're the first person I've talked to from Australia. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to someone from the future. How crazy when you think of the
Yes,
time zones.
yes, I know. I always tell people that because the time difference is crazy. Like for me, it's morning, and for you, it's afternoon. So we're literally like night and day, and
Right.
on different days.
On different days, right. So I'm
Yeah,
Thursday and you're Friday. So
yeah,
very cool. But yeah, so why don't you explain with our listeners what it means to be a soulmate manifestation coach?
yeah, definitely. I guess it's a reflection of my own journey in my life, having, I guess, walked the talk and actually taking manifestation seriously, because a lot of people are like, oh, I can manifest this, I'll just manifest that. And it just seems to be like a throwaway comment where you just wish for it and then it happens. But there is actually a process that you can follow that will actually have the results that you want to get, whether it be, you want to manifest your soulmate, or you want that new career, that new job, a car, or something like that. I mean, I've manifested many different things, even the house that we're living in now. But I guess the thing to take away is that manifestation is real. You can actually get some amazing results doing it. But there are a few things, I would say three things in particular, that may not have you get those results in the time frame that you want. So then people start to think, oh no, manifestation doesn't work. So I guess it's making this very woo-woo concept into something that's a little bit more of a process that can actually be followed. So I kind of just liken it to manifestation is like when you go to a restaurant, you have to, get clear about what kind of food you want to eat first, what location you want the restaurant's going to be. Then you turn up, you have a great attitude, you look at the menu, you look at, what's the offer. Your waiter comes and takes the order, which is the universe. You send your message to the universe. The order gets taken to the chef in the kitchen, and the universe goes, oh, that's what she wants. Okay, cool. So if you're kind of putting out there to the universe all these things that you don't want, that's when you can't like start manifesting those things that you don't want, because the universe doesn't know the difference between, hey, don't want and want. I guess I started focusing on this because I was in the situation myself, but I also saw a lot of women in my situation who were, high achieving, career focused, were go getters out there in the world. But I've had things happen to me, I guess, wake up calls, health issues that kind of made me go, there's something different. There's something out there, a bit more of a spiritual life, a bit more of consciousness that started to make me go, well, life isn't all just about, career and achieving and doing stuff. There's a whole nother thing out there. And once I started to go into that spiritual path, then all these different things started happening. And that's what actually happened with my marriage, my divorce as well.
Thank you so much for explaining that a little bit because I mean there's so many different things about manifestation, but what I find really interesting is your focus more on finding a person, a soulmate, right? Because that's different than manifesting a car or a house. It's another
Yeah.
full-blown person. And so I definitely want to get more into that. But I love how you explained, I also how you're manifesting either way. And so I think that's what's happening a lot of times when we're trying to manifest a certain thing and it's not coming through or it's taking a while. Well, possibly we're accidentally putting out in the universe what we don't want. And that's what we're getting more of, right? And so
Yeah.
being more mindful of like what it is that we're looking for and what it is we're calling in. And then also being aware of what's going on in our lives, like our personal lives. So like what you explained, which I'd love to hear more of the backstory on, but learning that there's more than just the masculine driven agenda that we were all basically
Yeah.
like conditioned into of, oh, be successful, do the thing, get the career. Especially as women, we're called to do a lot of things. We're called to be the mother, and we're called to also be the career woman. Like, we're kind of put in
Yeah.
this really impossible space, but that's also very masculine driven. And then when you get more, because that was my experience too, when you find yourself more in that spiritual path, it's like, hold on, there's a whole other way of doing things that's softer and more feminine, and that's okay. So can you share a little bit about your backstory and that
Mhm.
waking up from going from that, from being more career driven to realizing that there's more out there, and leaving your marriage and what that looked like?
Yeah, definitely. And I love how you pointed out the masculine drive because I was very much that. I've actually had an Akashic reading where she's first thing she's pointed out was you've been a man in a past life, many past lives. I'm like, oh, that makes sense why I'm so masculine in this lifetime. It's helped me achieve a lot and get a lot of knowledge and experiences that I need in order to accumulate, you know, my reservoir of being able to help women because that's really my purpose. I suppose where it all started was, in my I guess my 20s, my mid 20s, I was doing martial arts, loved it, had a great community. It was such a fun time in my life. And then towards the end of my 20s, I started getting injured. So it's what, people always have a huge wake up call. So I was getting injured. My health was a huge concern. I had to quit my full time job. I was married to an amazing guy that I'd met from my martial arts training. Life had been so good up until that point because then all of a sudden I was literally stopped in my tracks. I couldn't walk. I had to, lie down all the time because of this chronic sciatic pain going down both legs. We'd booked a cruise because I thought I was actually okay, and I was in a wheelchair on that cruise for 10 days. So I was, I couldn't even sit on that wheelchair because it was so painful, and I felt so ashamed that here I was supposed to be like healthy. At that time, I was in my early 30s. I ended up, and I guess this is coming to the one of the synchronous one of the synchronicities of my life was that I thought, okay, well, I need to heal myself. I'm not going to take surgery that does not call to me at all. And how am I going to do this? And a lot of this, why me and victim and like, why is this happening to me was going through me. But I really wanted to find a solution for this. So I thought I need to understand how I can heal myself. So I actually studied kinesiology and mind body medicine, which is learning the energetic systems. I learned about Ayurveda, TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. So I had this this amazing introduction to this whole new world that I'd always been kind of interested in. Like I'd always been doing natural remedies when I was a kid and essential oils and that kind of stuff. But this really put me onto another level where I was learning so much. And then that, I guess, is one of the synchronous synchronicities. I had a healing session with a classmate and I sat up from that table and I was like, I can't be this marriage anymore. And it was just such a clarity. And it wouldn't have happened unless I'd, had that injury and then had the kinesiology and the study that program. And I knew that I didn't want to practice as a kinesiologist, but I had to do this to heal myself. And from that, it was like such a clear revelation. My intuition, my guides were just saying, this is not a bad marriage. This is great. Like we got along well. We never fought. We didn't have any problems. But I knew that I was called to do something different and bigger and make an impact in the world and help people, someone I just didn't know at that point. So from then, I, you know, let my husband know that this is what I was actually going through. And at that time, we were trying for a baby. And, things happen for a reason, and our baby did not come. And we separated, we got divorced. And, I thought, okay, well, I want to find somebody. But yeah, I was really clueless about what I was supposed to be doing in my life. It was like a huge pivot. Like I'd finally overcome this injury. And then, what was I supposed to do next? So I ended up traveling around the world as a digital nomad. I was a designer. I was trained as an industrial designer in manufacturing. So I was lucky enough to have a remote working job so I could travel and have different experiences. And I was looking, I guess, for a sea change, something different like that I could do, or maybe fall in love while I was traveling. Neither happened. Had amazing, really fun experiences. But when I got back to Sydney, I guess another synchronicity was someone had been talking about Barcelona as a great place for digital nomads to go live. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. I lived in Valencia, but I hadn't lived in Barcelona. So I did the motions of applying for a visa. I thought it was pretty simple. It was not. I didn't leave Sydney until maybe 11 months later, until my visa was about to expire. So I said, should I go or not? And at that time, I'd established my life back in Sydney again. And I thought, I'm just going to go. So my intuition was like, just go, go. And if I had not gone to Barcelona, I would not have met my soulmate. So we're together now. Yeah, a couple of years since just after COVID, and that was really the right path. So that synchronicity really, aligned for me because I just created space to listen to my intuition.
That's quite an amazing story. And it's interesting because a lot of the guests I have on here, and I'm curious about, you might even experience this on your podcast, but a lot of people do tend to go through physical ailments that end up being like roadblocks that are meant to stop or, shift their life. And because they decided, oh wait, what's wrong with me? I need to heal myself. I need to investigate this. I need to, figure this out. And then being curious enough to go beyond Western medicine, right? To do something new, that's where they tend to find themselves. And so it's so interesting how when I see this like a very similar storyline play out with different people, I'm like, there is something here. There's definitely a synchronicity, I guess, in a way, but there's definitely
Yes.
a familiarity and like a common denominator. And then what makes me think of too, when you're explaining how you were kind of doing this, when you were doing this self healing and going through this pain, were you just not sharing this part of like your life with your husband? Was this more of like a personal journey, and then you did end up sharing it later, or was he like supportive through that when you were going through it?
Yeah, great question. He was very supportive. Like I mentioned before, he's an amazing guy. I have a lot of respect for him. I wish him the best in his life with his current partner. He was definitely supporting me. He was also in great pain, seeing me in pain, but he was definitely supporting me. He was always there for me. And yeah, it must have been hard for him to have a partner who was nearly disabled, let's say.
Oh, well, it's beautiful that he was, well, supporting you through that. But it sounds like you were kind of going on your own journey in the midst of it too. And I'm sure he probably did just watching you being on the sidelines. But I find it so interesting how you shared how one day you just heard clear as day, you can't be in your marriage anymore. And
Yeah.
that's so profound. I mean, I had a similar, not in relationship for me, but my turning point for my spiritual journey was I was a single parent. I was just trying to survive. And every night, like I would do like a glass of wine, nothing crazy, but then I wanted to start doing some healing work. But like it would have been kind of figuring out like, okay, am I going to have my glass of wine tonight and unwind, or am I going to not? And when my daughter was asleep, am I going to work on healing? And when you have a rough day, it's a hard choice to choose when it's like,
Yeah.
man, I just want to unwind. It was a long day. She's in bed. And so like I right after I joined this course, clear as day, while I'm putting groceries away, it was so random. I heard you can't keep alcohol in the house if you want to do this work. And I was like,
Oh.
what? But that was such a turning point for me because I listened. I didn't understand it. Now I do. It's making space for me to do the work I do now. But it was like, hey, okay, we hear you. You want to do this work? You just have to do this thing first. And it sounds like you got a similar wake up call. And there's something about your marriage that was keeping you from doing the work that you needed to do. And it sounds like even healing. It sounds like once you left your marriage, you were able to find the space you needed to heal. Is that am I following that correctly?
It's interesting because I think my marriage was, I guess, part of my journey. It was a stepping stone. I thought we'd be married forever. You don't marry someone unless you know that you're going to be together. So at that point in time when we did get married, he was the only person in my life. I didn't imagine any other life. And I suppose, for my journey, maybe even before this injury, because I had a business and my business was doing okay. It was doing well. I manufactured footwear and I invented a footwear and I patented it and it was successful and I was doing well. But I felt like it had been a trap. It became a trap because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm working so much, I'm burnt out. And I guess from that, another synchronous event was that I started my personal growth journey because of that business. And I didn't realize that my business was me. If I don't grow, my business doesn't grow. So at that point, I was doing my personal growth, and within my marriage, I was getting really obsessed with it. And I was like, hey, you have to come and do this with me. It's amazing. And you become kind of like a cult. You're like, growth is amazing. Let's do this. And you know that there's this different way of living. And I'm very much a very good marketer. When I love something, I'm telling everyone, and I'm recommending it, and sharing it with the world. And he just wasn't on board. He wasn't ready for that part of the journey. He just wanted to live his life. It was a good life. He was comfortable. He came from a very different background to me. So I'm more entrepreneurial. I'm a bit more risk taking, and he's a bit more stable and risk averse. So for him, he saw me changing and was not ready or willing to come on that journey of growth and transformation. And it wasn't the thing that split us apart, but it was like he even said, I feel like you're over there and you're pulling me along with you. And of course, you don't ever want your partner to be dragging you somewhere you don't want to go. And I feel like a lot of women, we're a lot more spiritually in tuned, attuned, and we are more attuned to our emotional intelligence. And we are a bit more ready to take on that spiritual path, that's consciousness. And I guess that's why you see a lot of women out there going, the guys out there aren't good enough. They're emotionally unavailable, and they don't have any consciousness. So we're kind of dealing with that. We're a little bit more ahead in that area. And so, when we also have to be patient, because my partner is also saying to me that he learned a lot of growth from his ex-girlfriend, from being ahead of him on that personal growth journey. But now he's a very successful coach who works with companies doing life journey work and personal growth work. But it's that disconnect between male and female and masculine and feminine, that because of our feminine energy, we are more likely to be in tune with our energetic and our intuition and our internal self. So he was a great part of my journey. But at some point when I had that wake up call and I was like, oh, I can't continue this marriage, I knew it was like the pivot that I needed in order to reach my potential and fulfill my potential.
I really love that you shared that part of your journey, because it does kind of break it down a little bit more as to like what the why was again. Because I know we talked a little bit before we pressed record about how, I think it's such a great message to put out there that you don't have to need a bad reason to leave a relationship. And I think a lot of the times we feel like, oh, he needs to cheat, or he needs to be
Yeah.
abusive, or there needs to be these toxic things in order to say, I'm not sure this is good for me. And then you're here, you are saying, that he was a great guy, he was a good husband. It had nothing to do with how he treated you. It was just that you both had outgrown each other. Really, it sounds like, it sounds more like you outgrew him and he wasn't ready to follow with you. And I think that that's really often what happens in relationships, is one person usually just gets more ahead than the other. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we all have our own journeys and our own, what our own pathways and what we're learning from that. And so I really, really love that. And especially just him even explaining, feeling like he's being tugged along. I mean, that must have been hard for him to be vulnerable enough to share that with you. And you were just trying to share this experience that you had that was amazing. And so, and I think it's important too, is learning, because it's so interesting, because even with my partner, like, I'm way more into the spiritual stuff than he is. Like, he's not
Yeah.
really into it, but the biggest thing is he respects what I do. He respects what I, and he wants to see me succeed. He doesn't quite understand it, I don't think, but there's that desire to, like, okay, well, it's important to her, so I want to see her succeed and be successful, and that's important to me. I, Whether or not I can take him with me to a retreat, that may or may not never be a thing. But I don't think and that has to depend on the relationship, and you know it's between the two people. But I think understanding, like, you both need to be in alignment, and it sounds like you just realized you weren't. And so being able to see that and then be willing to take action on it, and then being able to move forward from that is beautiful. I mean, it's sad because, like you said, we never ever get in a relationship hoping to end it at one point, right? You know, it's interesting. This is totally off topic, but it was an article I saw on Facebook just this morning that I thought was really fascinating. It was talking about a marriage, like this couple saying what saved their marriage was that they discussed from the very beginning that divorce was always an option.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, wow, that is a way different way to look at it. But the whole point was knowing that we're not stuck together. We don't have to stay together just because we're married, that we're here for each other to grow together. And if we lose sight of that, we don't have to stay. And I thought, wow, I have never heard that option before, but it makes so much sense because then
Yeah.
you're making the commitment to be present. You're not making the commitment to
Yes.
stay no matter what, even if you're not happy.
100%. And that is the essential part. It's like, well, I liken it to, buying making a purchase of something, right? You have that ability to refund. I know it sounds very dry in terms of like relationships, and I joke about this with my partner all the time. We when we got together, we both knew that we don't need each other, but we want to be together. And there's times when we fought and we're like, you know, should I just leave? And I'm the avoidant type. He's on an amazing personal growth journey, and he oftentimes has a lot more growth and experience than me, and I'm kind of like, oh no, I'm the one who knows the most of the time. But I've found a partner who can finally like mentor and coach me as well as be my partner and be there for me. And we had that agreement that we would not be together just because we needed to be together. But I'd always feel like, check in with my intuition. Am I going to leave this relationship? And it's like, no, because we're soulmates and we need to almost achieve our life goals together in order for this relationship to be done. Like we had this contract, this pact that we would meet in this lifetime, that we would do certain things together to help impact the world. We've got very, I wouldn't, I guess they're aspirational, they're lofty, but for us, that's part of our life purpose. So we feel like, being in this relationship together is helping us to achieve those personal goals. And I think that's a really healthy part to be in, a really healthy thing to understand when you're going into a relationship, which is why I always talk about core values, understanding your vision and your lifestyle before you go into a relationship. Because it's like, going to the food court and going, oh, what do I feel like eating? And then you're like, no, I actually want fine dining. I'm in the wrong place. So getting that clarity is super important instead of just going with, I need a guy, I need a relationship, I feel lonely, I don't want to be alone. And that's very much how I was when I left my marriage. And a lot of people saying, oh, you're so brave, you've left your marriage and so courageous. I'm like, really? I'm just following what I'm supposed to be doing. And there's no question that I had to stay in my marriage. So I think that's a really important part of, being in a relationship is, I guess, like talking about it, communicating it. And my partner's always like, communication is the key to the relationship. And me being my stubborn, headstrong self, I'm like, no, I know better. But having those, I guess, understanding of what your partner's goals are and what your goals are, and if they actually align to make you grow and to be reaching your full potential and your contract for yourself, if that partner fulfills on that and you created a win-win situation where you're also helping your partner fulfill in his life dreams and purposes, it's a soulmate match. And it will be easy, effortless. There won't be any like, oh, he didn't text me back, oh, and should I do this to impress him, or there'll be none of that. It will just be so easy and effortless, and it will just fit like a glove, basically.
Yeah. I love some of those analogies you shared too. Going to the food court and realizing, wait, this isn't the experience that I want, and being able to understand what you want, I think is a key thing because like for me personally, my brother used to call me a serial monogamist. I'd go from one long-term relationship to another. And then in the beginning of 2020, I had been through a couple abusive relationships. It wasn't good. And I just kind of got to this point where I was like, I'm done. I just need to just be alone. And that also eventually started the beginning of my spiritual journey too, was just choosing me. And so having that space to just like, hold on, I don't need a guy right now. I just need to figure out what I want right now. But I do have some questions I'd love to dive into because I have a couple that are coming up.
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
Coming up. Well, the first one I'd love to ask you is how did you become a manifestation coach for soulmates? Like, where did that evolve in your story, and how did you discover that and discover that that's like where you're supposed to be putting your energy?
It's a great question because I think it's one of those big things that you ask yourself in life, like, what's my career path? Like, what should I be doing, like work-wise? And, I guess it came from actually being on the journey myself. Prior to my divorce, I'd had the same long-term relationship, always had really healthy, really good relationships in the past. Didn't have any fights or any traumas or dramas within my relationship. So after I got divorced, it didn't occur to me that there was a dating thing out there, that there were these apps and all these dating agencies and ways of people to meet, because to me it had always happened very organically and naturally. I didn't have to date, and I was already in my 30s at that point, and I was like, oh, how do you do this when you're not in school, or I don't work in a workplace, or even a workplace that had men in it. So I was always working in female owned companies. So it was like, well, how do you do this without the online part? So I guess, for me, just following my intuition, going to travel, moving to Barcelona in Spain, and the the way that actually happened was that I'd hired a life coach. I'd got back into my personal growth work. I'd started doing some more self-reflection because I was doing that dating thing, being that masculine, getting out there, that energy, that force and pushing. And I just, had enough. There was a turning point when I just said yes to a Tinder date, and the guy was nowhere near anything that I would have wanted, but it was just, I just couldn't handle being alone. And so, that was a turning point. And I'm like, what am I doing? Right. This is not even close to what I want. And I guess finding that clarity is like the hardest thing you can have in life. For me, it's like the holy grail of, what do I do with my life to feel happy, fulfill my purpose, and just, work in an area that I love, because I'm always constantly jumping between different kind of roles. So what I did was follow my intuition. I was working with a life coach. I am a natural, I guess, people gatherer. So I started a book club on personal growth and spirituality. It's a few of my core values. So once I got really clear on my core values, I was like, I'm going to just do a book club on this, because I didn't want to go to events where there was alcohol, drinking, late nights, which attracted people who were like wanting just to do the, one night stand stuff, and have very, unfulfilling relationships. Um, so that was me following my intuition, wanting to bring people together. And I was thinking, okay, this is more towards my purpose. This is, kind of wanting to help people and move towards this life coaching journey. And then that's when he turned up for me, because I was following my purpose. And then, my business was starting to take off, and, I was really into business coaching. I was trying to work with people to start their businesses, because that's one of my passions, like helping people to, start up and get out of the 9 to 5 grind. And, that was kind of like my niche of my coaching, but it wasn't taking off. And, I was seeing a lot of, and I was thinking to myself, what have I done that I'm really good at, that I can help people with? And it was the manifesting part. It was like, well, I've done this and I've been doing it all my life, but I just didn't notice it. Like, have you ever thought about something like, an outfit that you wanted, or I was really good with doing it with like stuff. Like I was like, oh, I need like this vest and it's got to be this color and it's going to be this shape. And I just walk into a shop and it would be there. That's how easy it had been for me. And I was like, okay, so I've actually manifested a relationship and, it looks like a good one. Like it looks like it's going to last. So then I started, working with women because I felt like, am I working with men or women or both? And I just felt called to work more with women because I guess not being a feminist, because I don't like that masculine energy of being a feminist, but to empower the feminine. And that's really what I've discovered to be my soul purpose and my life purpose, and aligning those together to achieve that and impact the world.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that because it kind of just shows what evolution, what organic evolution looks like. You were just kind of following the next thing, thinking you knew what it was, and then, oh, no, roadblock, not quite what it
Oh
is,
man. Yeah.
And it's funny because we do end up teaching what we most need to learn. That's like something that I've seen over and over again. So it's like you
Yep.
were learning how to manifest a relationship, and now you get to teach other people how to do that. It's so funny because I think my daughter is a natural manifester because she just attracts things to her all the time, and I'm just like, how the heck. Meanwhile, I'm over
Amazing.
here trying to manifest and not necessarily with the greatest results. I do kind of feel like I manifested my relationship in a way, but it wasn't like I was out there intently like, okay, I'm going to manifest this person. It was more like, I know what I want. I know what kind of the vibe I'm looking for. And so, but I love that story, and I would love to ask. So this is the other question I wanted to ask you. So when it comes to manifesting a relationship, have you worked with women who have had like abusive backgrounds, or backgrounds where they came from difficult relationships? Is that something that you've worked with? And with that, is it so someone who's looking for that healthy, aligned relationship, should they expect to be kind of to have to go through healing in order to call that in?
Yeah, that's a great question. The reason why we don't get what we want to manifest is because we are blocking it, to say in the most vague, general way. When you're blocking it, it's because you're not aligned with your goal, either energetically, in the words that you say, in your behavior, and your thoughts and mindset, right? So there's no alignment with what you want and the way you're being. So that's why you don't get what you want to manifest. Now, with some clients who've had traumatic experiences with relationships in the past, naturally there's a lot of blocks, because what you experience, it's your world. It's like, that's what relationships are like. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to go into another relationship because I'm going to lose my freedom, I'm going to lose my independence, lose who I am, right? So that's almost like fear of success. It's not fear of failure anymore. It's like, well, if I go into a relationship, that means I'm going to lose my freedom, be in a traumatized relationship, lose who I'm. So you start to block yourself psychologically, and this is happening at a very deep psychological level. It's what I like to say. It's the unconscious part of you. It's actually the way you've subconsciously programmed yourself. So your subconscious is that part that is on autopilot. You can imprint new programs into your subconscious. Like when you learn to play the piano or you drive your car, that's a program that you've actually downloaded and it's become part of your software, right? You don't need to, how do I drive a car again? Like, what do I do? It's automatic. So that's what happens with relationships. If you've had those kind of relationships in the past, that becomes your kind of automatic programming, especially if that programming was learnt behavior from when you were growing up. So a lot of psychologists and therapists will reference your years between the ages of up to the age of 7. So a lot of that programming and imprinting happens at that stage. So if your parents, didn't have a great relationship, they were fighting all the time, they weren't present, maybe one parent wasn't present, maybe neither parent was present, and you were like constantly with being looked after by other people, weren't looked after at all, then your concept of love and care is going to be based on that. So hence someone who's had that kind of upbringing may go, oh, well, relationships mean that there's a lot of fighting and it's meant to be traumatic and it's meant to be a lot of shouting. Hence, I shout at my partner and that's normal, right? So some of that programming I had because of my parents, even though they have a good marriage and they're still together, so very old school. But, you know, there were some things that I had brought from my childhood into my relationships. And then now with Raf, I can't get anything past him because he's very much developed and done a lot of his own growth that he'll call me out on that stuff. And I'm like, and like we talked about triggers with partners before, like if your partner is triggering you in a way that will grow you and make you a better person, that is your soulmate. But if your partner is triggering you in a way that's tumultuous, as one of the guests on my podcast mentioned about twin flames and the soulmate relationship, the twin flame relationship will push you to the edge. It's like a karmic contract, but they're not necessarily your soulmate because it's not necessarily for your highest good. Like they'll push you in a way that will help you grow and maybe finish some unfinished business that you had to kind of like close up. But your soulmate and your partner are meant to be there to have you grow. And I think with my past relationships, it was all too easy almost because I'm somebody who had promised myself, I want to grow in this lifetime. It's my last lifetime. I'm going to, you know, I really want this process to happen for me. And those relationships taught me that, yes, relationships can be effortless and easy and amazing. And I'd had those. And then for me, it was kind of like, what's next? And that's almost, you know, another reason for leaving the marriage because it's almost like I'm not being challenged here anymore. I'm not growing because he didn't want to grow, and that's his path. That's okay. But we kind of kindly let each other go, and that's another part of it as well. Like when you have a contract with someone and it expires, and just respect it, and it's fine. It's okay and healthy.
Thank you for answering that because, you know, I do feel like, especially those in the manifesting realm, they might just want to just call in the perfect person without realizing that there's, you know, there needs to be some changes that happen. It's not just, you know, about calling in another person because we are here to learn and grow, like you said. And so at that point, if you're in a position where you're not looking at yourself and looking at, I love how you said automatic programming, you're not going to see what you're bringing to the table. And you're just going to keep
Yeah.
repeating the pattern basically until you've learned the lesson. And so I love that. And then your explanation for soulmate and twin flames is super interesting to me because it makes me think of my partner a little bit because I do get triggered from him, but it's more from him doing the opposite of what I expect in a good way, not in a bad way. And so it's more like me having to check myself and see, like, for instance, what automatic programming am I trying to fit myself into that isn't working for this relationship because that's not what he's wanting from me, right? Because that's just what I've been programmed to, the role that I've been programmed to play over and over. And when I try and play that role, because I'm so used to that, and then I expect a certain response, and the response I get back is not the unhealthy ones I've gotten in the past, then it kind of forces me to be like, whoa, what's happening? You know, and so
Yeah.
so I love that too. You explain how it's a lot of growth. And you know, it's funny because past relationships, like I was my daughter's dad, he unfortunately had passed away a few years ago, but we were estranged for a couple of years before that happened. But when we were together, before all that mess happened, you know, we were married and, you know, it wasn't until his own demons and drug addictions came into the picture that he changed. But up until that point, there was a good 3 to 4 years we're we were happy. Like there wasn't anything really tumultuous going on. Like we were just in a lot of ways he was like my best friend, you know? And but looking back at it, we were kind of also like roommates. There was nothing pushing to grow each other, right? It was just kind of we were showing up in this role, like he was my husband and I was the wife, and this is the role that we play. Like that's what it felt like. And so ever since, and then of course going through my not so great relationships after that, you know, to the coming to this place where I know now what I'm looking for. Like one of the things that that's really important to me is I don't want to just be in a relationship for the sake of being in a relationship. I want to be in a relationship that's going to grow with me. It's going to be present with me, that wants to be, you know, that understands that in order for us to grow together, we have to be in the moments together and not just be doing the day to day. Okay, you play that role, I play this role, and we're going to play a role together. It's like, no, we need to be two authentic beings that are trying to grow together.
Yeah, I love how you said that because I feel like we mimic the relationships that we see around us. And it's very natural for us to do that because even as children, that's how we learn. We mimic our parents, the people we grew up around. If you had grandparents around, extended family, your schooling, education, you follow all that because that's how we learn. And if those programs that were instilled in you at that point aren't working for you, then you need to change them. And like we said, we can't change other people, but we can change ourselves. So I always like to say, if you're not getting the results in your external environment, so I kind of put it back in a very more surface level or non woo woo way, if you're literally not seeing the right people around you or the right men around you, there's something you have to do. Like you need to take responsibility, like absolute responsibility for your results in order for you to make any changes. Like, yes, it's not your fault that you're single or things like that, but it's your responsibility for how you create your external environment. That external environment is a result of a manifestation of what you've been doing internally, which is like the way you've been behaving. So if you live in a certain suburb, you've taken actions to be there. You've signed a lease. You have money. You have rent that you're paying. You've taken those actions to be in that suburb, whether it's nice, whether it's whatever, right? So if you're not taking responsibility for that external result and identifying, what are the patterns, what is the subconscious program, what are the thoughts, what is the behavior that, I took action on to have that result, then things will not change for you. So a lot of people are like, I just need to do more of this dating thing because I actually thought that myself. I thought dating is a numbers game. You just have to get yourself out there. It's a very masculine way to think, right? That's the world we live in. Just get yourself out there. The more you date, at least one of them's got to be the right one. Okay, that didn't actually, right? You're nodding yes. That didn't actually happen for me in my organic relationships in the past. I wasn't even dating, right? I was just there in the right time, right place. And that's how it happens, right time, right place. You put yourself in that right time, right place due to intuition. You followed the intuition. I took that course at university and that's where my partner was. I worked in that company and that's where my partner was. So when we take responsibility for our external environment, no matter how good or how crap you feel it is what it is, and there's no good and bad. You did that because of the flow on effect of the way you were being in that moment. So you reap what you sow. You can sow new seeds anytime, and that's totally okay. And then there'll be that gestation process where you'll start to get new results. So if you're not seeing the relationships that you want, have a look and see what kind of subconscious programming is going on. Like, what were my parents doing that kind of really influenced the way I look at relationships? Does he exist for me? Hey, he hasn't turned up. So that's proof that there's no one out there. Are you telling yourself these false beliefs? And, are you open to changing, or are you going to be a victim forever and just go, no, it's a men out there? No one's out there. No, they're all bad. They're all gay or they're dead. That's what I've heard. So taking that responsibility is a huge part of it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm a big believer in accountability, and like that's how you change. That's how you shift your situation, is by first taking accountability on your choices up to this point is part of why you're where you are. I mean, it's not like a blame game. It's just more of like, okay, I'm going to look at, what have I done up to this point that obviously has led me here, and now what can I do differently that'll lead me to a different place. And so I love that. And I mean, it's true. It's so funny because I did do the dating thing during that 3 year gap where I wasn't in a relationship. I went on some dates off of like Bumble and Tinder. Not Tinder. No, I never did Tinder. But I did Bumble. I did Facebook dating. I mean, I tried a few different ones, but
Oh,
they just weren't. It's not a numbers game. It's really not.
no, no,
Um,
that's so misleading.
but what's funny is when you speaking about looking at the people you're calling in and what it is you're putting out into the world, like your own subconscious beliefs and everything else. It is interesting because I had a experience before I met my partner, and it was someone I met through Bumble of all places. But there were all these synchronicities, and I think in hindsight, it was like the universe was like, "Wake up, change your perspective." Because up until that point, I had very low self-esteem. My thoughts were like, "Who's gonna want me? Who's gonna be attracted to me?" I'd gone like 3 years without anyone like really connecting with anyone, so I kind of felt like it was me, right? And then this person got put in my path that he ended up living in my apartment complex. He ended up being the owner of my cat. Or my cat
Oh,
that I had that jumped in my car. That's another thing, is this cat jumped in my car, and that's how I met my
oh my
cat.
gosh, that's
Um,
amazing.
he used to have my cat when my cat was a kitten before he got away. And then on
Oh my
top of that,
gosh.
he was from New York. I live in California. He's from New York, and he's only been here for like 4 years or something. And his previous roommate was my sister's best friend. So there's like all these things that was the only reason that when he crossed my path that I actually said yes to, like, okay, well, let's see what
Oh,
this is, because obviously the universe is getting my attention. I was spiritually enough aware to be like, this doesn't add up. Let me just check this out. And
right.
it didn't go anywhere, but it was one of those things where I think it was like the universe was like, change your perspective, wake up. The way you're going is you're not going to meet the person you're meant to be with. And so it was like that wake up call. Then it was also kind of mirroring to me what I didn't want in a relationship. So it was a combination of like, wake up and, is this what you're looking for? No, then keep be open. And so my current partner was actually a good friend of my sister's. He's been around for years, friends with my sisters. I never really knew him or crossed paths with him. And then when things just kind of lined up perfectly, it was like, huh, I didn't need to meet my partner on the internet, on the dating site.
It
It
was
was just
there.
waiting for the right circumstances, but being open to meeting that person at the same time. But you're not going to be open if you're walking around with all these belief systems or these programmings that are telling us that we can't find our person. So it was just kind of, I just wanted to speak to that because I thought, oh my gosh, that's kind of like what I experienced. But yeah, so I mean, I love all this advice you're giving, especially for those that are trying to find their soulmate or feel like they've been looking and maybe haven't found that yet, and feel like maybe it's something they're doing, and giving them these other perspectives of like, there's other options you can do. And from here, so I know we've been chatting for a while, and I feel like you and I could probably keep chatting. Like, you're just
I
so easy
know.
to talk
It's
to.
amazing.
I'd love to shift to like what I like to call synchronicity story time. It's one of my favorite segments. It's kind of like magical. I know you kind of shared a little bit of a couple synchronicities. Maybe like, do you have a story that you can like focus more on, like on the detail of like, yeah, so this happened and then this happened and then however it ended up. But do you have a story like that you could share?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess the major one that was a huge turning point, a huge pivot in my life, it was definitely moving to Spain. So I'd never lived overseas before. I'd traveled a lot. I'd been to many different countries, but I'd never actually relocated. And so the intuition was like guiding me to go there. And for me, when I follow my intuition, there's just no question about it. I just like, okay, I'm just very like open to it. I'm not like resisting it. So I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna go. But then, doubt did set in for a little bit because it was such a big thing. But if I had not gone to Spain, I would not be where I am right now. I would not have my business, my partner. I would probably not even have this house because I wouldn't have a partner. So, that flow on effect. So it was definitely the synchronicity of following my intuition. And it was just a very clear voice that I just heard. When you have them, it's just like it just said, go. And it was so simple. And I knew exactly what it was talking about. It was just like, just go. And it's funny because you think, what about all those times when you had that intuition speak to you and you didn't follow it? A lot of people will say, oh, things turned out really bad, or like, then I got into a car accident, or like, so you always wonder sometimes that sliding doors thing. If I don't listen to my intuition, then what happens? What actually doesn't happen because you didn't follow that path?
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. When you listen, it's that sense of surrender, right? Which is really, really hard. It's way easier said than done. I've
Yeah.
only heard my intuition speak to me like that clearly a couple of times. And then since then I've been kind of like, hey, are you there? You know what I mean? Like, which I know it is there. It's just kind of getting out of your own headspace and listening. But, you know, it's there for sure. And I wanted to ask you, that voice you heard about going to Spain, was that the same like energy that you heard when you were told that your marriage was over? Was it kind of that same like gut feeling that you got?
It's a good question because when I knew my marriage was over, or I was told that my marriage was over, I'd had a healing session and we'd done kind of like a chakra. I don't know if it was specifically a chakra balance or anything like that. It was a kinesiology session, and I distinctly saw the colors red and green. And then I literally just sat up from that session with this knowing I can't be in this marriage forever. So I think in hindsight, contrasting the two voices, it was probably the same, but it might have come from different locations, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I'm not sure. Sometimes it can come in different locations, right? Or sometimes it can just come from here, in your torso area. Um, and sometimes, like for some different people, it's like a voice, or sometimes it's like a visual. I think it's just almost like a thought that's been implanted. For me, it's more like it's a this is the guidance, or this is the advice, and it's just it comes in a way that's so sure, and so it's just a surety that just comes, like you go, oh well, I'm not going to doubt that because it just sounds so sure. So maybe something like that.
Yeah, no, that's why I was asking, because that's kind of what it felt like when I heard that voice of, you, if you want to do this work, you can't keep alcohol in the house. Or
Hmm.
I had heard it one other time when I lost my when I was being called into tarot, and I was saying no way. I was being very resistant to it, and then my main one of my main sources of income went away, and I was like trying not to panic and trying to see the, okay, this is happening for me somehow, even though I was totally panicking. And then just clear as day, I heard, go work on your business. And I knew exactly what that meant, you know, like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go be a tarot reader. Like it just, you know, but I like the way you said it was like a thought implanted, because I'm like, that's how it is for me. Like I've had people be like, oh, so it sounds like you hear voices, like not in like crazy, but like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
saying maybe you're telepathic or something. And I'm like, it's not exactly like a voice though. It's kind of like my own voice, but not. And so the way you
yeah.
explain it, so yeah, it's like that assurity. So I love those two stories, because it just kind of shows how your intuition can speak to you in different times in different ways. And it's just continuously like looking for your highest good, you know?
Yeah. And the main thing, and you probably share this a lot, is that when you're blocking that intuition and you can't hear that voice, it's because you're all up in here, right? So a lot of the times we're all like, oh, is he going to ask me out? Or like, what should I wear for work? Or I'm hungry. What should I eat for lunch? So it's all that stuff happening up there. And I'm not a huge meditator. I know that it helps, but I'm one guest I had on my podcast was like, I'm narcoleptic, so I fall asleep when I'm like meditating. I'm like, I'm probably the same way. Sometimes at yoga, I fall asleep. So if that's happening to you, you know, one really good trick is that you could just start talking to your guides, and just instead of talking to yourself and beating yourself up, you could be more like, hey guides, like, what do you have for me today? Can you give me some kind of message? Or like, it's kind of cool, like just talking to yourself. And there's a book I like to reference. It's called Conversations with God with Neil Donald Walsh. So I'm not religious myself, but he talks about God as in his higher power or spirit, and he kind of just writes, and then just words just flow out. So sometimes having a conversation with yourself, your higher power, is a lot better use of headspace than that talk, and that actually even allows for more intuition and guidance to come out.
Yeah, and it gets you out of your head too. It kind of gets your focus someplace other than those spirals that yeah, I'm very familiar with those. So I love that advice.
Yep.
That's perfect. The final question I'd love to ask you is about legacy. What legacy would you love to leave for future generations, especially in the relationship department? Because again, I feel like, especially when it comes to manifestation and healthy relationships, what would you love for future generations based on what you've learned and your experiences working with people and your own experiences? What have you learned that you would love to impart on other generations, so they don't have to go through the messiness of figuring it out, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that is such a good question. I love that. I suppose through my own work and from my own life, it's to I guess it will be less and less for future generations as we grow more in consciousness and grow more wise to the way we've been living life, is that subconscious programming. Just being aware of that subconscious programming and how it's running your life, because there's something that you can't see, and it's just truth for you. That's just the way life is. So when you're aware of that, it's almost like how Eckhart Tolle talks about the ego and the self, the separation of self. It's kind of like when you know that you have subconscious programming, and you might see it if you go back home to your parents, over the holidays, and you go, oh, they're still doing that, and I've grown and changed, and you start to see that separation of the way they have been during their whole lives. If they have not grown, and they've stayed the same, then the legacy I would like to share with the world is that subconscious programming can be changed. I see it a lot now with my friends who are mums, and the way they grow, the way they nurture their children is so different to the way we've grown up, and how, and obviously now we've got all that technology. I'm not sure if I would introduce that to my kids, but our future kids, but just being so careful of what we're imprinting into future generations, that education. Like, I'm very much about wealth creation. I started my journey reading Robert Kiyosaki's books, making sure that you've got a good financial standing as well. All that stuff, all the stuff about health, all that stuff about, hey, if your health is not, and you're getting illnesses and disease, hey, it's because you're not following your life purpose. It's as simple as that. Dis-ease, you're not aligned. So if we know all this stuff and we're imprinting into our children the right kind of programming, or the programming that is more aligned with the truth of the way life really is, then that's what I'd love to leave as a legacy. That all this release work that we've had to do as adults because of the imprinting from when we were kids, we don't have to do that to our kids. It takes a lot of work to break it, because I know I've been going through it. Like, my partner's constantly calling me out on stuff that I've been doing, gaslighting, because I was gaslighted so much as a kid and not being able to see it. It's really important that we, allow our kids to grow up with that clean slate, and just give them that healthy education and that really strong foundation in their childhood years.
Yeah, I really, really love that. It's really coming back down to awareness, right? And awareness of your own stuff, awareness of what was given to you, awareness of what you don't want to pass on. And oh my goodness, that comment about parenting is so true.
Right.
A lot of my growth came from questioning the parenting that I was programmed to do, because that's how I was parented versus what I wanted to impart, which is very different. And yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
it's true though. It's when it comes to how are you showing up in the world, whether you're a parent or you're with your family, or you're out in the world, making a difference with like the work you're doing, for instance. Like, how are you showing up, and are you being aware of those programmings that we didn't really have a choice in back then,
No.
and now
Yeah.
we're starting to realize it in ourselves so we can shift and change it. And I think that that's beautiful, and that's such a great message, just remembering that we can change. There is nothing that is unchangeable. It's just, first you have to be aware enough to change first. So I love that
Yeah.
so much. Thank you so
100%.
much for joining me today. This was such a great conversation. Again, I feel like we could have kept on talking, like
Yes, I know.
but we're just about the hour, a little over an hour now. And so how can our listeners find you if they want to work with you as a soulmate coach and call in their soulmate and call in their future partner? How can they find you?
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm on Instagram at Michelle Chung Coach. My website is michellechungcoach.com. So pretty easy. You can join my free training as well. So I'll teach you the 3 steps on how to manifest your soulmate. So very straightforward, very direct. None of the fluff or woo-woo stuff that doesn't work. I've cut all that stuff out. So if you're pretty direct like me and you just want to get the info pretty quick, yeah. And also, if you'd like to work with me, I've just opened up a group coaching program. It's pretty exclusive, so you'll get all the help you need to actually move you through your journey. And that awareness, accountability, it's all going to be there, and I'm going to help you meet your soulmate. So met my soulmate within 90 days. So if you do want results pretty fast, it can happen very quickly for you. Just some very key points that you'd like that you'd need to focus on, and I can share all that with you in the programs.
Perfect. I'll be sure to put all that in the show notes. And then how can our listeners find your podcast if they wanted to listen to that?
Yes, thank you so much. My podcast is called Love, Life, and Energy. And so I love talking about this amazing stuff as well. And I'd love to have you on there, Sarah, to share all your wisdom and knowledge with all my audience as well. So basically just talk about the same kind of stuff, universal law, energy, relationships. I've started to talk about wealth creation as well, because that's a form of energy as well. And yeah, just really love getting into these topics that make you think, and have a lot of amazing guests.
Awesome. Well, I will put that in the show notes as well so listeners can find it. And I would be honored to be a guest. So excited. We'll have to talk about that later. And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much again for joining me today. This has been such a great conversation.
Yay. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.